Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have a brand new set of great stories for you to enjoy. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Sit comfortably. Here we go. Your girlfriend is no longer impressed. Last week, I rented a car to visit my girlfriend out of state. It wasn't the normal type of car I'd get, but since it's warm out and I had money to blow, I might as well do it up big with a 2018 Ford Mustang convertible. The trip was a 2.5-hour drive to see her, and I know this highway like the back of my hand since I traverse it often. Halfway through the journey, a navy blue Charger greeted me and asked to measure D's. I declined. He sped up and got in my lane for a brake check. I changed lanes and tried to put some distance between us, but he was determined to reenact Fast and Furious. The kid, probably in his early 20s, golden hair compressed under a Lakers cap with who I assumed to be his girlfriend in the passenger seat, trying everything from matching my speed and revving his engine, blowing kisses and locking eyes with his tongue out, doing what I can only describe as ravenously licking a lollipop. This kept on for about half an hour. Fortunately, he was too focused on me to notice a road sign warning travelers of the state police station a mile out. By then, I've about had it and wanted nothing more than to embarrass this kid in front of his girlfriend, so I feigned interest in the race. I revved my Mustang, sped up to put him in my rearview mirror, and made sure he knows he's about to eat my dust. Sure enough, he took the bait and engaged his lead foot. It wasn't long before his taillights faded into the distance. This police station I've passed by plenty of times before, and there's usually one or two eagle-eyed troopers on watch parked near the highway entrance ready to pounce. I witnessed a crazy police chase last year with these stateies involved, so I'm sure they mean business. Once again, I passed the station with no irregularities except this time the eagles have flown the nest. A few minutes later, the trees and atmosphere became awash with red and blue. Cars ahead and behind me slowed to a crawl. My racing buddy and his navy blue Charger now got a brother. It's another Charger, also blue, but this one had no intentions of racing. The kid is still in his car as I roll by, making sure to make eye contact with him and his now unimpressed girlfriend, and to be extra petty about it, I blew her a kiss. This is God-tier instant karma revenge right here. I only wish you had a dash cam so we could see it with our own eyes. And our next story. Actor picks the wrong sound crew to mess with. Here's another little tale from my days working in the entertainment business. Very early on in my career, I managed to get a gig working as a showman, a person hired in just to work the show, on stage electrics, and follow spots on a major West End musical. Even though I was nominally a sound engineer, the chance to work on a big show, in albeit a different capacity, was too good to pass up. When you're a youngster in this industry, you would be daft to turn down such an opportunity because the experience garnered is invaluable, even if it's not directly related to your primary skill set. We spent around 6 weeks working on the production fit-up. Most of the time, I was working on rigging lamps, running cables, installing additional dimmer racks, yada yada. Sometimes I got to help out the sound crew rigging their kit and thus got to know them quite well. Fast forward to a few months after opening night. Some of the electric showmen, myself included, had managed to pick up the occasional extra work assisting the daymen, crew who were permanently hired to the theater, doing lamp rounds. This is where you go round the entire theater, front and backstage, replacing burned-out lamps. Useful extra money. Thus, I happened to be in the theater well before the half-hour call and was hanging out with the sound crew at the sound desk. There were two of them. We'll call them Pete and Chris. One would run the FOH board for that night's show, while the other would do other jobs like handing out the radio mics to the cast at the half, collecting them at the end, and troubleshoot any problems during the show. They'd also swap duties every day. So we hear the half called and Chris goes off backstage with his box of radio mics to hand them out, while I carry on chatting to Pete. About 10 minutes later, we see Chris returning to the FOH desk looking very distressed. Pete asked him what on earth was going on. It transpired that the male juvenile lead had bollocked out Chris for some utterly trivial problem to the point where he'd been reduced to tears. I should point out that this particular actor was not well liked by the crew because of his arrogant and holier-than-thou attitude. This did not sit well with Pete at all. By the time the audience was beginning to fill the auditorium, you could hear the ambient chatter level going up. Pete then grabbed his headphones and, parking one earpiece over his right ear, proceeded to punch in the pre-fade listen button for that actor's channel. A grin then crept over his face. He then brought the channel live and very slowly raised the channel fader. He handed Chris the cans, and a huge grin also spread across his face. Chris then handed me the cans so I could hear what had amused him so much. I listened in, to be confronted by the sound of the actor right in the middle of taking a full-throttle dump. We're talking grunts and groans and levels of flatulence quite the equal of the trumpets that flattened the walls of Jericho. Bear in mind that this sound is now being leaked out into the auditorium, albeit at a level just barely perceptible to the audience. I glanced around at the punters in the stalls and saw that quite a few people were looking around quizzically. I had to struggle to rein in my laughter at the delicious payback, but as it was getting close to Act 1 beginners, I had to go off and take my station. So I high-fived my friends and went through the stage pass door to the Electrics crew room to be confronted by my colleagues falling into hysterics. It was then that I became aware of a peculiarity with the show relay. For context, the show relay is a microphone front of house and a bunch of speakers all over the backstage and dressing room areas that allow the cast and crew to listen to the progress of the show. Due to a curiosity of its design, what was barely audible out front was now being hugely magnified backstage. The entire cast and crew, no matter where they were being subjected to the sounds of our actor dropping the kids off at the pool at practically full volume. For the rest of the show, the hapless idiot had to contend with the entire cast and crew giggling uncontrollably whenever he went past, and all the while remained completely oblivious to the reason why, as the one place there were no show relay speakers was in the toilets. And our last story. CFO can't do math. A few years ago, I worked for a tech company that was only just keeping its head above water. Most of the staff genuinely believed in the product line and did their best, but nothing was ever a standout success. Many ideas were put up to management, but often knocked back by the CFO, who we'll call Karen, said it would be too expensive or wouldn't get a good return on investment, and many ideas we knew would never work somehow got approved but never achieved anything. My team was working on a product enhancement we were absolutely convinced would be successful. We had a realistic budget, we had customer feedback showing this was needed and wanted, and firm offers to purchase if it was available. We were convinced our numbers were watertight and put them up to management. Next product meeting the following week, and Karen shoots down every argument we put. Despite the customer feedback, she claims our numbers are wrong and it'll lose money. We simply can't understand this, as we'd been over them many times. We start going through the figures step by step, and she keeps telling us we're wrong. Out of frustration, my manager goes to the whiteboard. Yep, we still have one, and walks everybody through the figures step by step. Almost everybody is doing the math themselves on their tablets and phones or in a good old-fashioned piece of paper and nodding in agreement. Except Karen, who's using a credit card-sized calculator that came with her expensive leather binder and keeps saying we're wrong. My manager suddenly works out what might be happening and asks to have a look at Karen's calculator. He does a few basic calculations, and his suspicion is correct. The cheap calculator does not follow the order of operations. Order of operations is a fundamental set of rules about which calculations to perform first in a mathematical expression. For example, 2 plus 3 times 4 is read as 2 plus 3, 3 times 4, meaning you always do multiplication and division before addition and subtraction. So 2 plus 3 times 4 equals 14. What Karen's cheap calculator was doing was all operations in the order they were entered and reading 2 plus 3 times 4 as 2 plus 3 times 4 equals 20. So a room full of people with degrees in computer science, engineering, and finance all agree the figures are right, except Karen, who's convinced we're wrong because her crappy calculator says so. She maintains we're wrong and our figures don't fit with her way of thinking. The revenge. At the end of each month, each team has to submit expense reports. We're normally quite good at forecasting expenses, and any variation is usually something we need to buy at short notice. These are submitted to Karen for approval, who then authorizes adjustments in our budgets. Two engineers who are mathematical geniuses spent most of their coffee and lunch breaks for nearly a whole month madly scribbling down complex calculations. They suggest some small variations to planned purchases, bring a few items forward by a month, push a few items back a month, use a couple of different suppliers for multiples of the same items. Nothing unusual about this, as we have a range of ways to buy things at short notice from various suppliers. The whole thing is cost neutral overall, but it's a variation that needs to be approved. Then they prepare the expense report for the manager to submit to Karen, who demands an explanation. The manager gleefully submits an itemized list of expenses for the month and the next month and invites Karen to check the figures herself. Use your calculator, he says. The variation in expenses is very small when calculated properly, but it comes out to millions of dollars if done the way Karen's crappy calculator does it. As I said, these engineers are mathematical geniuses. Karen isn't impressed by this and takes it to the CEO. She launches into a tirade about the engineers forging expense reports to embezzle millions from the company. She basically accuses the entire team of fraud. The CEO says he'll look into it and comes to see my manager. This in itself is very unusual, as the CEO very rarely leaves his office for things like this. If there are any problems, you're usually summoned to see the CEO. The CEO isn't a bad guy, just really busy most of the time. We're watching the manager through the glass partition go through a lengthy explanation with the CEO, pointing out figures on the screen and writing on bits of paper. The CEO sits there in silence for a minute, taking it all in, then suddenly bursts out laughing to the point of tears rolling down his cheeks. Then suddenly he's not laughing, and he goes back to his office, and within a few hours there are a couple of auditors going through some of Karen's financial reports. There are glaring errors which they initially think might be signs of fraud or embezzlement, but eventually they put it down to Karen's crappy calculator. Not fraud, just incompetence. Karen is summoned to the CEO's office. We don't know exactly what is being said, but we can hear the CEO shouting. He never shouts. The result is Karen gets fired, despite still maintaining she's right and everybody else is wrong. She has just 1 hour to pack up her desk and leave. She's finally escorted out of the building. When she gets to her car, there's a piece of paper taped to the windshield. It's a picture of Stephen Hawking with the words, "You must be at least this smart to invent your own branch of mathematics." Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.